Good evening, Xavier, basketball fans. This is the RaGing X Report with Jim Reaker and Bill Gabriel. We're going to be talking everything Xavier University basketball. And I will welcome in my friend Bill Gabriel. How are we doing tonight, Bill?
I'm doing just fine, Jim. How are you?
I'm great. It's Sunday night. We're going a night early this week. We thought Musketeers start play in the Maui Classic, or the Maui Jam, I think they call it, or the Jim Maui Jam or something like that. We'll be playing at 2:30 tomorrow, so we thought it would be best that we do our report here before the tournament started next week. But first of all, let's go back and talk about the first loss on the Musketeers docket this year. That was in 77-68 loss to the Wisconsin Badgers. Bill, what were your general takes on that game?
Well, Xavier's got to start half a little stronger than they did against Wisconsin. Both of the first 4-minute periods, which the coaches usually refer to as their 4-minute wars, Xavier was seriously outscored. They ended up closing the gap the first half and tried to close the gap the second half, but it was just way too many points they gave up early in the start of the second half to overcome it at the end. They got to come out making some better decisions, making sure whatever the other team adjusted to at the start of the half, they're able to kind of counter adjust to a little quicker defensively. They got to stop those quick runs by the opponent at the start of each half.
Although, going into this game, it was kind of the opposite. It was they weren't closing out the half, and they were putting the focus on that. But, yeah, because the first two games had good starts in the first and second half of both games, but it kind of let the game let the opponent come back to them. This was just the opposite. So I guess you could say they just need to play an entire half, both halves.
Yeah, they definitely got to find a way to be a complete team, and that's just, I think a lot of that's just adjusting to all the new roles, and even though they're still running some stuff probably similarly that they did last year defensively, it's a different coach approaching it, and so they're getting some things that might be a little different. They're trying to adjust to it's not being 100% in their meetings or listening to how they're saying things. I can't really say if that's the case, but definitely they're adjusting with the new bodies that they have and the different rotations. So hopefully that is something that they can shore up here as they move on. Also the quality of the opponent. First two games were teams that they expected to beat, and Wisconsin wasn't necessarily someone they expected to beat. They know they can beat, but a little bit stronger opponent. And I think Wisconsin is going to be a lot better than the sixth team in the Big Ten this year. They look a lot better than that. With the kind of guard play they had surrounding that very talented center, they should be much improved over last year.
Oh, yeah, I have to agree with you. And not only, we talk about, everybody refers, we got a new coach, but here's the reality. We got 3 or 4 new coaches. So not only, and, we got 5 new players, 3 of them being graduate transfers, 2 incoming freshmen. I think you're right. There's a lot of new people, and everybody's still trying to get to know each other and know the system and know the terminology. And I think it's just a lot to learn. And I have to agree with you, too. I think Wisconsin's going to be in the top 3 or 4 of the Big Ten. Ethan Happ is maybe going to be first-team All-American. And then Dimitri Trice, they really complement each other inside, outside. And he, when he had an open look, he knocked him down, and he was very, very effective in the first half. They kind of shut him down a little bit in the second half, where he didn't score as much. But, of course, Happ took over. He had 30 points and 13 rebounds. But there are times you didn't think that, especially Zach Hankins, played some pretty decent defense or made him work for his baskets at least. It wasn't just easy going.
Yeah, Hankins definitely, had him thinking and approaching it from a very cerebral standpoint, setting him up for one move and the next move. it was kind of fun watching that little battle develop the other evening.
Yeah. Now, looking at some what I saw as some real downfalls, and hopefully they don't become themes that we talk about every week. First of all, the free throw percentage, 56%. We just can't have that. I mean, right there, we left 7 points laying out there. You would hope to be shooting at least 70, 80%, and that's been kind of a staple of Xavier teams all throughout history, that they've been great free throw shooting teams. And not only did they not shoot well, they didn't shoot as many, which tells me they're not taking the ball to the basket as much as they should sometimes. And then just a woeful stat was their three-point percentage, just a little over 20%. And those are things that they're going to have to hopefully get together. But again, it's early in the season, and hopefully we can turn those two areas around quickly.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, if you've taken a couple 3-pointers and you're a guy who can get to the rim, and that's your forte as well, and then you throw up a third one, I don't think you're figuring out real quick that it's just not your night, and you need to get on the attack mode and make something else happen for your team. I think they settled sometimes for threes, and then I think Wisconsin kind of backed off and dared them to take a few, and when they weren't going down, they just weren't going down.
And I think they're still trying to figure out who the outside shooters are going to be. Obviously, Ryan Wellage was brought in to fill that role. He has that skill, or seems to be, can get hot. I think you got to figure out, is Q a three-point shooter or not? I think he probably needs to hit the ones when he's wide open, but does he need to seek that shot? And same thing with Paul Scruggs. He's hit a few this year. Is that his game? Although they both have great driving games, and I think just what you're talking about, if you're going to step back off of them, and they got to be able to hit them, but they also got to be able to take their guy to the basket if they're going to be right up in their face, and not necessarily have to try to create three-point shots. I'm not sure either one of them are pure three-point shooters.
Yeah, agreed. They definitely can't hit them when they're in rhythm and stuff. Just off the dribble and things. I don't think sometimes are the best choices for a three-point shot. Let it flow through the offense, work the clock a little bit more. I think we took a couple fast ones the other night against Wisconsin.
Before we move on, and I'll let you have final comments about the Wisconsin game. I'll go with a positive and a negative. Really positive, I thought Najee Marshall finally played the way we expect him to play. His first two games, he had not played very well. Of course, he was supposedly under the weather, had been very, very sick before the opening game, didn't even know if he was going to play, missed a lot of practice. But he put in 24 points, had 13 rebounds, and that's the Najee Marshall that we expect to see. And we both, I think, believe he's probably going to be maybe the next superstar at Xavier, with his ability to put the ball on the floor and his length, and just his ability to get to the basket and finish. On the other side, a negative, something that we would hoped wouldn't come about, but did again, was Tyreek and his fouls. And I didn't even realize that, looking back, he only spent 12 minutes on the floor, and actually he only had 4 points and 1 rebound. And that's just if this is going to be a successful team that can compete, especially with some of the teams they're going to probably end up playing this week, at least we know tomorrow, got to have Tyreek on the floor a lot more, and we got to have him contributing. And Travis Steele said this has got to be an inside-out team. And when they do start that way, the first two games, I think they did start that way. Get it into him, that kind of opens everybody else up. Any final thoughts? We'll move on from this Wisconsin game, but anything else that you want to throw in before we move on?
Hey, it was just good to see Zach Hankins show up on both ends of the floor and have a pretty decent showing in the extended minutes that he got. With Tyreek being taken out of the lineup because of the foul situations. And, yeah, hopefully Tyreek can fix that. I don't know what it is where he picks up a foul and then it's like immediately picks up a second foul because he's frustrated or agitated. I don't know exactly what, but hopefully he can compose himself after a foul and stay out there a little longer.
Yeah. So moving on, I'll give you a scenario. So Travis Steele calls you tonight, Bill. Says, Bill, I trust you. I trust your judgment here. Who would you start right now? Who are your starting fives? And again, I know sometimes I think this is going to be dictated by matchups because we have some bigs and we could go three guards like we did against Wisconsin. And I think that was dictated by who they kind of put out there. But right now, who would be your starting five? And the thing that's kind of been interesting out there, and I don't even know if it's a possibility. Again, I don't know if it's anything they've worked on or even thought about, but some people are saying, you're looking at this team, they went eight deep against Wisconsin, the first real challenging team. 8 deep, and Keontae Kennedy only got 6 minutes, so really they're playing kind of a 7-man rotation. But who would you start tomorrow against Auburn? And I don't know how much you've looked at their starting lineup. They got some bigs, and they got some great guards too. What five would you put out on the floor tomorrow?
Well, I kind of agree with the matchup standpoint. But I really think their best five that they can put out there to start is probably Tyreek Jones, Najee Marshall, Quentin Gooden, Kyle Castlin, and Paul Scruggs. And then, if they feel like they're in a situation where, a big is taking advantage of Najee, they can do some things. But I really think Najee's going to take advantage of any big that the other team's going to try to cover him with out on the perimeter. They can bring Castlin into the scenario to kind of spell him down low. It seems like he doesn't have a problem going down low and defending people, even though he's giving up some size. Then they can bring in Ryan Wellage, and I can't see anybody going with 2 other additional big men to force Xavier to play with Hankins and Tyreek on the floor at the same time. It doesn't seem like anybody in college basketball plays with 2 post players anymore.
That is right, and it'll be interesting to see this week because it got a little bit different scenario. Been following the Musketeers a lot in these tournaments. Actually, gone to a couple the last few years, and this one especially, they're going to play 3 days in a row. So even though right now it maybe looks like the rotation's maybe only 7, pushing it 8 deep, I really expect them to go 10 deep. I expect Elias Harden and Donterius James to see some time this week too. Now it might be their chance to say, hey, I belong here. I deserve more time. Because after we get into the 2 games a week, they could maybe go with a 7 or 8 man rotation. But I think they're going to get a chance this week to maybe earn some time. And, of course, what we don't see is what's going on in practice because we know with most coaches that's where you earn your playing time.
Right. Yeah, it would be good to see Elias and Donterius, provide some minutes off the bench to help, not put so much pressure on some of those other guys to play 35, 38 minutes a game, get them down to a more manageable 30 or something where they're, so their legs will hold up through the grind that is the college basketball season.
It will be interesting. So if you get that call tonight, you make sure you get that message out to Travis. Let's review the Gavitt games a little bit. Wasn't a good go for the Big East. Actually, fortunately, St. John's defeated Rutgers on Friday, and that brought it into a respectable Big Ten with 5 wins and the Big East with 3 wins. And I was thinking back, and I didn't look this up, but I believe 2 years ago when they started it, I think the Big East, the first year maybe won it by a game, and I believe last year it might have been a tie, 500. But the Big East, and not only did they lose overall, but some of the key teams, Villanova got really hammered by Michigan. Marquette, who was picked to finish second, got hammered by Indiana. Ohio State went to Creighton and won. What's your take? Is the Big East down this year? And actually, Providence and Butler didn't play. Providence has lost. Actually, I think Providence has lost 2 games now, maybe. I think Butler's still undefeated. But is the Big East going to be down a little bit than what we've had the last few years? Of course, two of the last 3 years, the national champion of Villanova has come from the Big East. What's your take on the overall health of the Big East in this season?
I think the issue for the Big East this year is that a lot of the teams had a lot of turnover in their rosters. Obviously Villanova lost a majority of their starting unit. I think the Marquette lost quite a few starters. Obviously Xavier did. So for the greater proportion of the Big East teams, it was a transition year for most of the teams. And so I think they just got a lot of new faces learning systems, dependent on freshmen or younger players to be stars, and it's just taking them a while to get settled in. I think by the time you get through Christmas, they'll be a bit more solid footing, and once we hit that Big East play in early January, I think you're going to see these teams settle down, and they'll probably then be the surprise teams of the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think you're right, because you look at the three Big East teams that did win. Georgetown defeated Illinois 88-80. DePaul defeated Penn State 72-70, and St. John's beat Rutgers pretty handily 84-65. But those three teams, Georgetown, DePaul, and St. John's, do have a lot of their marquee players back, didn't lose a lot. And, yeah, the other teams you're talking about, we know about Xavier, Villanova. So they got some top recruits, but they're very, very young. Marquette actually didn't – they only lost Rousey, but they did bring in some key freshmen and a couple transfers. So I think they're dealing with some of the things that the Musketeers are dealing with, and that's, trying to figure each other out and get used to each other. Of course, again, this could be an important week that maybe we see some strides made. They get to spend a lot of time together and a lot of time on basketball. Any other thoughts about the Big East, the Gavitt games? Who you want to play next year? Send it out to the Big East. Say, Xavier to play.
It'd be nice to see them maybe pull someone like, Indiana, any of them, Illinois, just somebody not Wisconsin.
Just not Wisconsin. We've had enough.
Just
of Wisconsin.
Not Wisconsin. Penn State, anybody,
Yeah, I think it'd be great to have the Hoosiers and have them come to the Cintas Center. Wouldn't that be a great atmosphere? Because obviously a lot of them would come across the border for that, or Ohio State, have the Buckeyes come down here, or even go up to Columbus. I think that'd be a good trip for us, either one, Indiana or Columbus. So hopefully we don't get left out, because sometimes not all the teams participate. Again, there's not an even number, and a lot of scheduling. A lot of these teams are in these tournaments now. I see, I think Seton Hall. There's another one that lost. Seton Hall lost to Nebraska handily, 23 points. But I saw they're actually playing in a tournament already this weekend. So a lot of college basketball going on right now. A lot of games being played, and again, this is when everybody's trying to figure it out. Well, some positive news, and I know you were up on this because you said something to me. One of the first games we went down to the Cintas Center is Travis Steele had a great recruiting class coming in, and for the 2019 class, or freshman next year, he's got 4 4-star recruits coming in, and another a 2-star recruit, I believe the other one is. Maybe one of the best classes they have had. Any of them you want to talk about, or you're high on, or I think you've seen some video of a couple maybe. Who you want to talk about that's coming in?
I'll just give you a quick run through all 5 of them.
Okay.
They've all 5 signed their letter of intents, so they're all have been received by the university, so that Xavier can officially comment on them. And Coach Steele is very high in his praise of all 5 of them coming in and how they're going to contribute to the Xavier way. The first guy that we can talk about is Kiki Tandy. He is a 6'1" point guard. And Coach Steele described him as kind of a new age point guard, the modern point guard who can score at a high level, attack the basket, and distribute the basketball. So kind of a 2 Holloway type player. So that'd be a great addition if he can play like 2. That would really make things go for the Muskies. Damir Bishop, who is a 6'5" guard, very athletic, long, good shooter. He plays in Philly, so he's a tough kid. Plays on a really good team in Philadelphia. So hence he's not called upon to be much more than complimentary to everyone else. I think they all average about 10 points a game. I think there's 4 other Division I recruits on the same team, so it's pretty stacked. So he looks like a great pickup. He may be a guy that Xavier may not even really have someone who's comparable to him at that height playing guard and the skill set that he brings to the table. The local product, Deontay Miles, who is a 6'11" center, he is long and athletic, and according to Coach Steele, there's a good chance he's still growing. He's only just turned 17 in August, and at the start of his senior year, so he in the little highlight tape that they had of him, I think everything was a dunk. Even when he went coast to coast on from a defensive rebound and dunked it in, it was quite impressive. Daniel Ramsey, who is a 6'8" forward from Georgia, and he's a very good perimeter mid-range jump shooter and a good post player who can finish with both his right and his left hand. Brings a toughness to the box, so he should be a nice forward piece for them. And then the final signee, Zach Freemantle, who is also a 6'9" forward. He is a more of a perimeter player, a good shooter, but can play the post as well. So I think they got some really nice pieces there that you put those together into a team, and the Muskies are going to have something cooking here.
Yeah, the 2 that I'll make comments on is Kiki Tandy, who I don't know if you've read the stories about him, but supposedly he wanted to play for UK, but the offer never came. And so maybe a little chip on his shoulder there. Was recruited by a lot of big programs around the country, but chose the Musketeers probably just to stay close to home. Again, he is I think from Hopkinsville, Kentucky.
I think that's correct. Yep.
He'll be. That'll be an interesting because the Kentucky fans already told me, well, he wasn't good enough to play at Kentucky. So, and you know who I'm talking about there. So.
Yeah, I know.
But I also saw some video on Deontay Mills, and the story. He was 6'8" at the beginning of last year, 6'11" now. Yeah, and they said he doesn't. And if you see video of him, he doesn't look like he's fully grown or developed, but he's very athletic and very smooth. Looks like somebody that can run the floor. He almost reminds me of a Lou Alcindor, somebody who's kind of tall and lanky, but very athletic and can run very fluidly. So yeah, everything I saw, it was like he was just looked like a man among boys in all the videotape I watched. So
right, yep.
It's going to be interesting, because but we're going to need to fill in because again we have the 3 graduate students who will only be around for 1 year, and who knows about Scruggs and Q. They have good years. It seems like unfortunately you hope they have a good year, but you hope it's not too good that they get pulled away. But the future looks great, and of course the Musketeers are kind of in a transition period here. All right, let's talk about Maui. Start tomorrow. Talk about Auburn first. What do we expect from Auburn? They're ranked number 9 in the country right now, probably going to move up. I was looking at the standings or the rankings. There was a couple teams ahead of them that lost. So as that early poll usually goes, if you keep winning, you usually keep moving up as people experience their first loss. But what should we expect at 2:30 tomorrow? That's an early one for Muskie fans. And I believe it's on ESPN too, but it's 2:30 tip here. Of course, it's 9:30 out in Maui. It's the first game of the tournament. What should we expect from the Auburn Tigers?
Auburn sounds like they're a really balanced team. They have they're paced by a point guard, Jared Harper, who is putting in about 15 points a game right now, early in the season, and about 7+ assists per game. So he is a guy that Xavier definitely needs to, hold in check and not allow him to get going too much, or it could make the morning in Hawaii a difficult one for them. They have a transfer guard, Samir Doty, who is also hitting about 15 points per game. So those two guys, coupled with their pretty talented front court, are going to give the Muskies their goal of holding those guys down and keep them in check, and hopefully then the Muskies can pull out a big W.
Yeah, they got 6'11" Austin Wiley, who I couldn't find, but for some reason was declared ineligible last year, but he is now eligible and is playing. They picked up Doty from VCU. He had to sit out a year as he transferred. And also, I believe they have a guard who was first-team All-SEC, Bryce Brown, who hit 107 three-pointers last year. So, again, this is going to pose a big challenge for the Musketeers. Auburn's 3-0 already. They were 26-8 last year, and they've actually already beaten number 25 Washington this season. That's one of their wins. And, of course, you know who the coach of the Tigers is. No?
It's Bruce Pearl, isn't it?
Bruce Pearl, our old buddy. Remember that. That might come up in trivia. Just remember that. That might come up in trivia. All right, looking down the road then, this is one of this. We'll talk about at the end what we hope for out of this. But if they would win, they most likely would probably play the number one team in the country, that being the Duke Blue Devils. And I was doing a little research on Maui. Duke has gone to this tournament 5 times. They've won it 5 times. They have never been defeated in all their trips to Maui. That's just unbelievable, and it's been over about a 25, 30-year stretch. But they take on San Diego State, and San Diego State, not a bad team. They were 22-11 last year. They're 2-0 already this year. They're out of the Mountain West. What's your take on day 2? Who do you hope to be playing?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about getting to the championship game, I hope it's San Diego State. That they upset Duke, and they're there for the Muskies after they pull off the upset of Auburn. Really, and it's the same, I think, at this point of the season. Anytime you're playing someone who is of equal or better talent, you're wanting to see your team gel and play well, and that's really what I hope happens for the Muskies on this. And if they can do that and pull off some wins in the process, that would be great.
Yeah, and then to round out the field, then of course the other bracket, which we will end up playing at least we'll play one of these 4 teams. Be Arizona. Of course, we've had a good history with them. Sean Miller's team. They're 3-0 right now, 27-8, but they lost a lot. In fact, they're not even ranked in the top 25 right now. Also is Iowa State. They're 3-0. They were 13-18 last year. They were kind of a mid-pack Big 12 team. Probably the team most people think will make it to the finals, and probably a number 1 versus a number 3. Gonzaga right now is number 3 in the country, 3-0. They were 32-5 last year, and I didn't remember this though, but you know who put them out of the tournament last year?
I do not remember.
Well, they actually lost to Florida State the game after they beat Xavier. So they were put out by the Seminoles also, just like the Musketeers last year. But they got a lot back, and, again, they're expected to have a great year. Again, that number 3 ranking. And then the other team over there is Illinois, who right now is 1-1. Of course, Georgetown beat them in the Gavitt Classic. They were 14-18 last year, kind of a mid-pack, mid-lower pack Big Ten team. So overall, what would be a good trip for the Muskies? Obviously, a great trip would be they win the thing, but being realistic, what would you be happy with happening in the next 3 days for the Muskies? Would 1 win be good, 2 wins? I mean, and you look at it this way, it's almost like if you lose that first game, you might have a better chance of winning 2 games than if you would happen to beat Auburn, and then you might have, you're going to be in the bracket, the championship bracket, with tougher teams. So you could actually lose the first game and still come back 2-1. Would you feel good about that, or win that first game and then lose 2? But I mean, what are you hoping happens? What would make you happy? The least.
What would make me happy would be 3 W's, and give us the
what would the realistic
Maui Classic? Realistic. I think Auburn's a tough first round opponent. I think maybe if they don't pull off the victory against them, it'd definitely be nice to see them come back at 2-1. If they pull off the upset and lose the next day 1-2 or 2-1 again, just how it works out, but somewhere in there. Just kind of depends on how the chips fall with tomorrow's game.
That's kind of what I thought. 2-1, 1-2. Even if we go 1-2, we come back, we're 500, and then we get into, again, the meat of our non-conference schedule. As we say, the 2 games a week, and again, competition that I think will be good for this team to, again, continue to grow and gel together. All right, before we go to trivia, you got any more thoughts about Maui, except that we'd like to be there and we're not going to be, but maybe someday.
Oh, yeah, the pictures I've seen, it looks very nice. The Muskies on the beach and going to a luau, so that would be an awesome thing to experience. But just good luck to them out there in Maui.
Yeah, and I think this week's an important week for this team just to see where they go and how they gel together. Again, they're going to be together a lot, playing a lot of basketball, a lot of time spent on basketball. So hopefully things will, again, start to come together. All right, you ready for trivia?
Let's go for it.
All right, so the topic tonight, because we're playing Auburn tomorrow, SEC team. Did you know that in the last 10 years, the Xavier Musketeers have played 24 games against SEC teams? 24 games. You know what their record is in those 24 games against SEC teams?
Oh, that's a good question.
No Googling.
I'm not going to Google. I'm just going to take a guess. I'm going to say that they're 14-10.
19-5.
Wow.
Now, here's the real hard question, though. Of all the SEC teams they've played, obviously they've done very, very well. There's only one team they have a losing record against in the last 10 years from the SEC. Do you have any guess who it would be? And I'll even
Tennessee.
give you the teams they've. Did you remember Bruce Pearl?
Yeah, was it Tennessee?
Yeah, Tennessee. You are right. They were 1-2 against the Volunteers, and I'm sure you probably remember some of those games back in. It's been a while. Been probably about 8-10 years ago when he was there, and they played some big games, and they actually beat the Volunteers once, but lost to them twice. But get this: in the last 10 years, Alabama, they're 3-0. Auburn, 3-1. Florida, 1-1. Georgia, 3-0. LSU, 2-0. Missouri, 4-0. Ole Miss, 1-0. Vanderbilt, 1-1. And again, the only one they have a losing record in the last 10 years to is the Tennessee Volunteers. So very good with the trivia. So any last thoughts before we sign off and wish the Muskies good luck tomorrow?
No, I'm good.
All right. So we will probably be back to our regular schedule. I think the Musketeers play Wednesday when they get back next week. So we'll probably be back to our regular Monday night taping. But until we see you and talk to you fans again, we say go Muskies.
Go Muskies.
All right. Good job.
All right, we're good?
We are good. So.
All right, Jim. We'll talk to you later.
Have a good evening.
You too.